As point of order, did we lose Councillor Beddoes?
Yes, we did, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Maya, so I think we need to wait 15 minutes to confirm if Councillor Beddoes can rejoin us.
And if Councillor Beddoes has not rejoined us in 15, we'll have to adjourn the meeting for lack of quorum, as I understand it.
That is correct.
Okay, and then I'm not 100% sure what that means for in camera after. If we can get him back for in camera, but
No, the entire meeting would be adjourned.
Sorry, has anyone heard from Councillor McMath?
Councillor McMath sent an email around 3 o'clock. She's unavailable due to work.
Okay, so yeah, we do need Councillor Beddoes. Thank you. He just texted me. He's trying to get back on.
For all those who are watching at this point in time, we are having some technical delays with capturing Councillor Beddoes, who's in Mexico. Unfortunately, without Councillor Beddoes, we do not have quorum. There will be a delay for approximately, at this point, I think 12 or 13 minutes. If after that time, Councillor Beddoes is not able to join us, unfortunately, the meeting will have to be adjourned for lack of quorum. So stay tuned.
Councillor Beddoes, can you hear me?
I'm here again. Sorry, I don't know what I was doing, but I got back in.
Okay, I recommend Councillor Beddoes just leave your camera off just to save
My
some
camera is
bandwidth.
off.
And yeah, we could just use the mic.
We just had a hell of a thunderstorm here, so I don't know where that has anything to do with it.
All right then. It's now 6:04 and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first thing I'd like to start with is that I acknowledge we're on the sacred ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Sooke, who are traditional stewards and protectors of this land and its generous resources. These territories are now home to many people. Our work does not start and end with this land acknowledgement. It is one important action towards reconciliation, honoring the lands and Indigenous heritage, which dates back since time immemorial. And now I'd like to ask for the approval of the agenda. Now, I can't actually see anyone except for Councillor Bateman. So if either Councillor Beddoes or Mayor
Second.
Hugh, that's great. I'd like to call the question. For those that are virtually here, call out if you're opposed to the motion. Otherwise, I'll assume that you're in favor. Okay, all in favor?
Aye,
Okay,
Beddoes.
motion passes. Thank you. I'd like to see adopting the minutes. Could I have someone to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Anyone else?
Second, Tate.
You, Mayor Tate. All in favor? And the motion passes.
Aye, Beddoes.
You're too late, Al. Sorry, you're lagging. All right. Now we move on to item number 5, report of the Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to highlight one of the main points in this CAO update for this week, as we did a more fulsome one last week, is the Shop Sooke First campaign. This is an initiative that is in alignment with the district's strategic priorities and our emphasis on community economic development. And really excited, staff worked very closely with the Chamber of Commerce and other partners to pull off this campaign, put this campaign together, and have some flyers. There's a hashtag created. So looking forward to watching this initiative spread over the next few months here.
Lovely. And I'm holding your buttons and tattoos. Thank you. So moving on. Oh, question, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I had a question and it relates to that earthquake we had was that Thursday or Friday? I think it was, and so many people are talking about it. Many of us felt it. I'm wondering if this is an opportunity for the district to really bear down on earthquake preparedness education.
For sure, through your worship to Councillor Bateman. Definitely that's something we look to do when there is a natural event that occurs, is to ramp up the communications and messaging and future outputs of our newsletters and stuff of like, hey, here's where you find something about information to this. Similar to what we did with the Old Man fires, we provided a bit more refresher information on be prepared for 72 hours conversations. So same idea with earthquakes. And so for sure, I'll get Miss Moog is off sick today, but I will confirm with her next week, kind of if this is going to be flushing out of the next few newsletters, but I anticipate in talking with the fire department, they will kind of repackage some of that information up and just recirculate it out through our distribution channels.
I just note that we've had here in the district test activations of the Emergency Operations Center for a fire at Erin Estates and the tsunami event. So perhaps we might take a run with an earthquake event at some point. Just an idea.
For sure. Yeah, no, I can, I'll talk to Mr. Bennett, our emergency programs manager, and just throw out an idea, because we definitely, to your point, have done some mock EOCs. So earthquake is not one I don't think we've done here yet.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. It's now time, item number 6, public question and comment.
Just point of order.
Oh, yes, Mayor?
I would like to move receipt and then speak to the motion, move receipt of the CAO report and then speak.
Okay, so do we have a seconder? Councillor Bateman seconds. All in favor? Oh, you wish to speak to the motion first? Yes?
Yes, just in comment back to Councillor Bateman and our CAO, is in the past, the district did do a lot of work around the Great Shakeout Day, which includes drills within the office. I know it's on October the 16th and that day is passed, but perhaps rather than doing something after every event, it could be easier for staff to coordinate on these annual events where we work with the schools and the rest of the community around Shakeout BC. There is an established date, and I know in the past we did a lot around that. So there could be some things that would go out, and then if we plan for that, it'll just make it easier, I think, rather than every time there's something. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further comments or questions? Should have asked. Seeing none, we will call the question. All in favor of accepting the report? The motion passes. Thank you. So moving on to item number 6, public question and comment period. This is it. You have your opportunity to speak, I think, for 2 minutes on anything that's on the agenda. If you wish to, please step up and push the little button and the light will blink red and you've got your time. Please provide your name and basically not exactly where you live, but roughly. Oh, there we go.
Hi, everyone. Donnie Eve, President, Sooke Region Historical Society. I'm here because the Society operates the Sooke Region Museum and Visitor Center and owns the land at the corner of Sooke and Phillips Road and the wetlands beside it. I'm speaking to Agenda Item 8.1, Priority Item Number 1, the Throop and Phillips Road Connector. The agenda report notes the district requested support from several organizations, including the Sooke Region Museum. We received that request only a few days ago and responded that we need more information about the project and potential impacts on the museum. We were not informed that this was coming to council tonight. The only reason I found out is because Councillor Bateman had it on his Facebook. So thank you, Councillor Bateman, for that. As residents of this community, our board is well aware of the traffic congestion issue. I personally commend staff and council for working towards and bringing forward ideas for solutions, but I'm very concerned that plans are moving ahead without any consultation with the museum board. The plans, as shown in the agenda report, have a picture of a road right now that cuts through part of the museum main building, cuts off the lighthouse, and we don't really know if that's what the impact will be. I don't want to speculate, but we've received no information, so we aren't even able to look at what those impacts might be. The Sooke Region Museum and Visitor Center is a protector and promoter of our community's culture and heritage for the region from East Sooke to Port Renfrew, Shianu, Sooke, and Pachita. It's a critical community hub and focal point, gateway to services, amenities, and attractions for the entire region. For many visitors, the museum's the first point of contact, and we take great care to make the best first impression we can for our visitors. 40,000 people enter the Visitor Center Museum every year, and the night market adds another 10,000 over the season. Okay, I'm just about done, sorry. Staff promote the area's economy as they answer questions about where to eat or stay and where to buy gas or get groceries and where to find an item they might suddenly need, like a bicycle tire pump or camping gear. The museum provides a critical service to residents and visitors all year long, and maintaining this access is crucial. We're beginning work on plans to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the opening of the museum for 2027, which coincides, according to the report, with planned construction. At no time has anyone from the district approached the museum to consult with us on this project, which, as the report notes, has been underway since mid-December. It also notes the project's at a 75% functional design, implying it's already known how the property along Phillips Road will be impacted. And we ask that this information be shared with us so we can plan accordingly, and ask that we are consulted so council knows what those impacts might be and can make an informed decision. We know how important this project is, and our goal is not to impede it. We'd like to be part of the conversation about what might be the impacts to the museum and visitor center, and work together with you on a solution in the best interest of the community. And thank you.
Nick Dickinson Wild, East Sooke. I'm just wanting to talk on 8.2 agenda item, long-term borrowing referendum. I would just like to encourage council to choose one of the options that has a exact date involved rather than referring it back to staff or receiving it for information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Calling once. Twice. All right. We'll move on to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. So I'm looking for a motion to move the consent agenda.
Move receipt.
For receipt. It's moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by
Tate, second.
by Mayor Tate. Anything? Nope. Okay. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay. None. Then I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to 8.1, Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Active Transportation Fund Grant Opportunities. On to staff.
Perfect. Thank you. And through your worship to council. So this report, the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada opened a federal active transportation funding stream around the middle of December 2024. Deadlines for this application were very short, and they closed the application deadline as of February 26, 2025. This funding stream provides the opportunity for multiple project application submissions up to $50 million eligible projects to fund 60% of active transportation eligible components of the project. Accordingly, staff have prepared 4 priority-based project applications for council's consideration. The first project is the Sooke connector that extends from Highway 14 along Phillips to a new roundabout that's located at the north side of Sea Park and all the way through connecting through to the Church Road roundabout. The second project is Little River Active Transportation Trail, and it's the access point coming down from Sun River onto the trail to reduce the substantial grading challenges they have there of over 30%, reducing them down to 8%. The third project is Otter Point Active Transportation Corridor Continuation, which is basically completing the frontage improvements to the municipal hall in alignment with our suburban collector standard that matches the property next door at 2197 Otter Point. These project improvements would continue all the way up to Rhodonite Drive, connecting the Broom Hill area and filling in that gap with getting them down to the Stickleback Trail and then into the town center. The fourth project is Highway 14 Active Transportation Continuation, which basically continues from where the ministry has left off the sidewalk construction around Ed McGregor Park, and we continue with sidewalks along both sides of the highway down to Whiff and Spit Road. This project contains the designs to include bike lanes that are shoulders, as well as sidewalks that are separated by curb. The design is completed within the extents of the land right-of-way that the ministry owns right now. As development was to occur following this project, staff would work with the ministry to have frontage improvements, expand one of the sidewalks into a multi-use trail so that you'd have more separation for bikes on the highway. Project costs, benefits, as well as project descriptions are provided within the report, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions regarding these projects or any aspects of the design following my presentation. All project estimates and project funding applications were prepared following all the grant requirements as well as best engineering practices to ensure grant opportunities are maximized and that the worst case project costs are accounted for in the years that these projects are proposed to be realized for construction. For clarification, I'm going to provide a bit of a project breakdown for the Priority 1 application for the Sooke Phillips Road connector that goes from Highway 14 all the way to the Church Road roundabout. This project does have a substantial estimated total project cost of $49 million, approximately $49.8 million. And basically, the contingencies and the allowances that are put into this project and included in that cost do follow best engineering practices, and they are requirements of the grant. So to highlight the main 4 of them, there is a 20% project contingency on this project, which is equivalent to $10 million. There's allowances that are built into unit rates that follow best engineering practices, accounting for primary construction of this project in 28 and 29, which is a 10% inflation based on the worst cases we've seen over the last 5 years. We're hoping this to be a lot less. This is a $5 million price tag at 10%. There's 50% of the soils on the project based on the new legislation for contaminated soils, meaning they have to be disposed of differently for exported materials and projects. We've accounted for 50% of the soils to be contaminated, which has built in another $2 million contingency to this project cost. It's not expected that any more than 25% at a maximum would possibly be contaminated, maybe on Phillips Road and parts of Sooke Road, but the connector should have no sources of contaminants in the soils. There's also very standard for when the projects get realized, all engineering quality control inspections, construction inspections, the contract administration of the project, as well as the project management. It's typically required in best engineering practices, as well as grants, to put in the 12% allowance for these services. That equates to about $6 million. And there's a large economies of scale on projects of this magnitude, and we're only expecting that to cost a couple $1 million. So due to the magnitude of the project, we're expecting competitive bids when this project gets realized for tendering, and we anticipate utilizing an approximate 10% contingency during project implementation. We've also conservatively estimated and accounted for 50% of the soils being contaminated, 10% construction cost inflation, as well as 12% for project management, contract administration, and quality control. We anticipate being able to work within a 10% project contingency, construction inflation only being realized at 2 to 4%, not 10% when the project gets realized, and maybe 0 to 25% of the soils actually being contaminated, with only having approximately up to 4% being utilized for contract administration and project management. That is a lot of information, but with that, the actual construction cost of this project may be realized at approximately $35 to $40 million and a $10 million reduction from the total estimated project cost. It's reasonable to anticipate that the actual project construction cost may be $10 million less than the estimated cost. However, we need to anticipate the worst case scenarios for these projects of this magnitude so we can, one, maximize grant opportunities and ensure that if we are going out to seeking funding, that the appropriate amount of funding is in place to cover a worst case scenario. Based on this worst case scenario, $49.8 million, and if the district is successful with our ATF funding application, the district's project contribution, which is anticipated to be funded via referendum, in this report is approximately $32 million, but based on what the district can fund, knowing today, we would be at approximately $28 million for the district's portion of the cost, which would be funded via a potential referendum. At the time that the project is realized through construction, the actual project cost may still be reduced by another $10 million, as I previously gone over. As the project is not anticipated for construction until late 2027 through 2029, there are potentially more grant opportunities that will come available, and stacking is allowed under this funding opportunity, as well as other financial means of funding through asset management reserves that council may consider over the next couple of years, and would allow for another option for council consideration to reduce potential borrowing amounts when the referendum and borrowing was actually realized. As the ATF funding program facilitates multiple project applications, it's very strategic positioning to support applications and for the district to commit to their share of the project costs based on the worst case scenarios, and to see if one or more of the applications even get approved by the federal government for funding. When the project funding applications are announced, which is anticipated in early 2026, I will be working in unison with the district's finance director, Ms. Liu, to present council with any options for council to consider for funding the district's contribution for any of the projects under this ATF stream. We have the following resolutions. There is a lot of them in blocks for council's consideration, and we'll have those put up on the screen. And I'm very happy to answer any questions related to the projects, designs, or consultation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. Ms. Gray or Ms. Liu, this would be a question for Ms. Bagnall, but can we move all these as a block, or do we need to do them individually?
Through the chair to council, you can move them all as a block or individually based on council's preference.
Thank you very much. All right, then actually, I guess I get to decide. I'm going to read them all out and then ask if someone is willing to move them so we can then discuss. Sorry?
Point of order, use your microphone, please.
I believe I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Councillor St. Pierre. I cannot hear who you're speaking with.
Okay.
There's Councillor Bateman. Thank you.
No, I think it was actually, anyway. All right, everyone, remember to use your mics. Thank you. Okay, so tonight we're going to read out all motions and discuss after having read out the motion and move the motion. Thank you very much. This motion is that council support the Throop Road and Phillips Road Connector Active Transportation Project and confirms that this project will be tender ready in 2026 for anticipated construction in 2027 through 2029 at a total project cost of $49,791,200. And that council supports the funding application in the amount of $16,901,991 based on the eligible project cost of $28,169,985 to the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Active Transportation Fund. And the council commits to its share of the total remaining project cost in the amount of $32,889,209, as well as any project cost overruns. The council support the Little River Active Transportation Sun River Access Project and confirms that this project will be tender ready in 2026 for anticipated construction in 2027 at a total project cost of $2,763,441. And the council supports the funding application in the amount of $1,658,064 based on the eligible project cost of $2,763,441 to the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Active Transportation Fund. And that council commits to its share of the total remaining project cost in the amount of $1,105,377, as well as any project cost overruns. That council support the Otter Point Road Active Transportation Continuation Project and confirms that this project will be tender ready in 2026 for anticipated construction in 2027 at a total project cost of $2,096,602. And the council support the funding application in the amount of $884,930 based on the eligible project cost of $1,474,884 to the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Active Transportation Fund. Last one, I think. No. Okay. The council support the Highway 14 Active Transportation Corridor Continuation Project and confirms that this project will be tender ready in 2027 for anticipated construction in 2028 at a total project cost of $10,789,017. And the council support the funding application in the amount of $5,801,769 based on the eligible project cost of $9,669,615 to the Housing Infrastructure Communities Canada Active Transportation Fund. And the council commit to its share of the total remaining project cost in the amount of $4,987,248, as well as any project cost overruns. I'm looking for a mover.
Move Tate.
Moved by Councillor Tate,
Seconded for discussion.
seconded for discussion. Thank you very much. All right. Open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Chair. Can I proceed as the mover?
Please.
Okay, so I have a question first off. This is a significant amount of funds. And there's 4 separate applications. So is it one application with 4, like, sorry if this isn't clear, I'm not well. Is it 4 applications going into one stream? Or is it one application with 4 different components? And the reason why I'm asking that is we may find that we get some of the funding, in which case, and then going to referendum, there may be residents that support some of these, but not all of them. So that's the part I don't understand. Or let's say we apply for the 49 million and we receive only 20 million, then how is that allocated? Or is it 4 separate applications in which we could get 1 or 2 or all of them? And then the need to borrow may or may not be necessary. Or I'm thinking we go to referendum and that fails, but we still know that we need to advance sidewalks along the highway or up our Otter Point Road. So I'm just trying to untangle that in my head, please.
Clarification from staff. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, and through the chair to Mayor Tate, it is the latter of your interpretations on that. So these are 4 separate applications under this funding stream, and they're priority-based applications, meaning in the order that they are presented, 1 through 4 is the priorities that are presented to the funding partner, meaning that application 1 for the critical TMP components is our #1 application priority, and then consecutively going down through projects 2 to 4. So what we are anticipating is that they would look at, and if successful under this, we would either have just application 1 funded under this funding stream, or it may be application 1 in unison with application 2, 3, and 4 potentially.
So we may not get one, but they could do 3 and 4 though.
No, incorrect. We're priority basing the applications, meaning number one is Sooke's 100% priority over all other application considerations.
Okay, but what I wonder though is, I see what you mean there, but having not, and I know that the referendum question will follow, is it may be perceived that we deem this to be priority number one, but the community may say no, it isn't, because the referendum could fail, and there would be more support for the other elements. So, but we won't know any of this. So you see sorry, I'm not articulating that well. Right now, we're advancing that as priority one is the transportation master plan, but is contingent upon residents paying significant amount of additional taxes for a long time and thereby paralyzing the district to borrow for anything else. So it may not be, the public may or may not agree with that. So then that throws out everything because that's our first, we put the weight into one. Does that make sense?
I think at this point, what I'd like to maybe do is ask Councillor Bateman and Councillor Beddoes if they have any questions, but also see if our staff can provide any further clarification.
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Tate. So we have inquired with the funding partners and they asked us to prioritize the applications. However, if they deemed for some reason that our project one priority application was not eligible or did not meet some of their main criteria, but the other applications did, they would not consider our additional applications. So there would be a possibility that if for some reason the partners deemed our application one not eligible for some criteria, which it is very eligible and it meets a lot of the criteria, they wouldn't just throw out our other applications, they would still consider them, but there's a chance that they would fund our priority application first, and then they would be considering the other ones after funding the first one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Councillor Bateman, do you have any questions?
Well, I think Councillor Beddoes had his hand up, so he's
I
next in
don't-
line.
Can't see that. Councillor Beddoes, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I had very similar questions to Mayor Tate. That depends on what they come back with. But my understanding is that we can get up to $50 million. So we're asking for the whole enchilada and see what shakes out. In the interim, we're going to be striving to find other funding sources. So thanks, Mayor Tate, for bringing that up. That clarified some of my questions. The last question I had at this point in time was the Highway 14 sidewalks down to Whiffenspit Road. I believe that's where it goes. I thought that was covered by the Ministry of Transport and Transit. That's a question to staff.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair to Councillor Beddoes, I alluded to this a little bit in the report, but ultimately on the ministry's highway, they will not typically fund any sidewalk construction. They will literally just fund their laning construction. It was a bit of a once-off when the project got funded in 2020 to complete the sidewalks from Otter Point down to McGregor Park. But typically how it goes is any municipality that highways go through, the municipality will be the funders and responsible for the maintenance of any sidewalk and active transportation construction along the highway, where the highway will maintain lane to lane as well as the shoulders. And the shoulders in this project are to be considered as bike lanes.
Okay, certainly how I didn't understand it that way, but thank you for the clarification. Yeah, and just on this, I know it sounds like a terrible amount of money for people, and it is. But we've had some clear direction from the public that they want us to do something about the traffic situation, and this is the one major step in heading that way. I hate to say, hopefully anticipating that we won't need to borrow that much money, but we have to put this application in good faith to the federal government, which could possibly cough up $50 million. for these projects. So I'm in favor of this this motion reluctantly, and God knows we'll probably get a lot of feedback on it, but we have to start somewhere. If it gets too expensive or the citizens will have the opportunity to vote it down, that certainly is their right. But we were told to jump into action, and I commend staff, done a great deal of work on this, both in the engineering side and the financial side, to put this before us so we can at least see what's required and where we need to go in order to move our community forward. Again, it's a scary, scary time, but it also takes some bold people to make some bold decisions, and I think this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Bateman?
Okay. Thank you for this report and the big vision here. I'm glad, thank you for the clarity as well around the priorities, because I think it's worth noting that it's highly unlikely we'll get all four, given that our ask of 25 million is about 5% of the total national available grant funding. There's 500 million in this current first of subsequent windows. So I guess you're setting the table for letting the Ottawa know that these are our priority projects, and nonetheless, the through connector piece is the top priority. So just going through some of the questions I have here, you've noted in the report that these projects are supported by the Ministry of Transportation, the CRD, BC Transit School District 62, Ministry of Environment and Parks, as well as our MLA La Jeunesse. I know the ministry, of course, through the memorandum of understanding, this particular route is baked into that memorandum of understanding. But do you have support in writing from these other parties, or are you seeking that support?
So through the chair to Councillor Bateman, everyone you have alluded to there, I have reached out for. I have provided them the project maps as well. And as of today, I've received written support letters on the letterheads from all those organizations supporting the district's priority-based applications.
That is fantastic.
In terms of the economic development ones, as it was alluded to earlier in the public, I've worked with Ms. Scott, our economic development officer, very similarly at a high level to support these active transportation projects in principle. She has reached out to several non-profit community groups within the district of Sooke, and we just had a very short window to do that and reach out and gain support. We have received support with half the organizations that she has reached out to, and we'll be following up directly with others.
So these institutional letters of support will go as part of your application package?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I hope we can see those in a supplemental agenda at some point. And yes, there are 14 groups I see that Ms. Scott has reached out to. I'm curious, does staff have plans to share with us a comprehensive cost benefits analysis of this bypass? There was in 2014, a business case was presented. I think Mayor Milne commissioned one for the Charters to Phillips section. And I think that will be very critical in helping us reach a community decision on this.
Yeah, thank you through the chair to Councillor Bateman. So the next steps with this project, we are at a 75% functional design, determining the exact extent and any potential land discussions will be presented with an update to council in a closed meeting. With the design money to advance to final design is scheduled to go through following council's consideration and budget deliberations this year. We are planning to advance to final design in the summer of 2025. Prior to going into the final detailed design, our next step is basically finalizing the continuity of the surface infrastructure components, which is basically your continuity between sidewalks, bike lanes, your separated bike lanes, and how they intertwine in between the projects going from the roundabout all the way to the entrance of Sea Park and through past the museum. When we're at the point of with a finalized plan for the surface infrastructure continuity. At that point is when we will be reaching out to adjacent property owners such as the museum. We are just not there yet. We will be there over the next few months, and consultation with those adjacent property owners will take place prior to us advancing to final design. Once we advance to final design in the summer, that's when, like I said, if there are any potential land discussions, council will be made aware of those in a closed meeting in the coming months.
Okay, and again, the need for a public-facing cost-benefit analysis document of some kind will be part of the district strategy in bringing this referendum forward.
Yes, as part of the referendum, there will be a full package provided that show exact details of the entire project. It would also have appendices to it that would basically have every single traffic study that we have done in relation to all the projects that have been completed so far to date in Sooke, in alignment with the Transportation Master Plan, as well as all the analysis that have been done for these components of the project. All that information, project details, the costs of the project, all the supporting documents from consultants would be available and presented. So it would be available to the public prior to them making a decision on a referendum vote to finance a project of this magnitude.
Good to know. Thank you. Can you tonight give Ms. Eve and her colleagues at the Society and the museum some peace of mind that the route is not going directly through their property?
It is not going directly through their property. Right now, designs are working within the constraints of the district's road right away. But like I said, we're working on surface infrastructure, finalizing the continuity between separated bike lanes as well as sidewalks and multi-use paths. Once we have that down and fixed is when we're going to consult further with adjacent property owners, being the museum, as well as further consultation with Sea Park.
Okay, thank you very much for these answers.
Sorry, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So in terms of what's happening here, as I understand it, staff has now enough numbers that we can actually ask the federal government for help with paying for some of this. And this is the first step towards asking for help. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And as I understand it, in this type of situation, if the district was not actually to guarantee the funding, the application would not go forward. And we basically are unable to move forward with our transportation master plan or solving any of these issues. Is that correct?
That's correct, unless council considered putting out to the public to fund the project costs completely without any funding opportunities.
So in other words, if we do not move forward with this particular motion, we're looking at a referendum for the entire amount.
Correct.
So I'm just trying to translate that a bit. Okay, so as I understand it, the referendum question is also based on moving forward this application so that we can actually get more accurate numbers in terms of what the referendum ask would be. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Ms. Liu will allude to more details on that in her coming report.
And as such, if we don't move forward this motion, we can't really move forward the next motion or the next discussion, which would be the referendum question. Is that correct?
It would depend on what direction council wanted to go, whether to try and fund the project without a funding opportunity or with a funding opportunity.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, as I understand it, from what you were saying before, due to engineering best practices in terms of the ask, and because it's best to ask for more and not needed rather than not enough, you're expecting that the amount would be potentially, and I won't hold you to this, $10 million less on the full project cost. Not on the amount that the district is responsible for, but on the full project cost, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What does that actually represent for the district's portion?
Where that represents is the district's portion, as I alluded to. If the full project costs of the project came into play and the project ended up costing $50 million, the district's referendum amount would be $28 million. We are very hopeful, and this will not get determined until the project is tendered out and completed, which is at the time that the loan would be taken out, that the project will come in at a $10 million reduced cost from the total project cost, which would then potentially reduce a major loan amount down to the ballpark of $18 million. However, that will not be known until the project is tendered and realized for construction. So the ultimate ask on the referendum as is would be $28 million if we were successful with the grant opportunity.
All right, and just to confirm my understanding, if we were to receive, I believe it was 18, is it 16 or 18 from the grant? For the four,
It's approximately 16.8
16,
million, I believe,
16.8,
and
okay.
details are in the report.
if we were to realize substantial savings on the project, those savings are passed directly to the district, or are they passed on to the granting agency as well?
They would be both. So it's how the projects are determined is it's a $50 million project. Of that $50 million, there's approximately $28 million that's the eligible component. So yes, if there was a project reduction, it wouldn't be a direct reduction in that amount, but for the eligible components that were reduced in costs, that amount would be reduced by the ground. But overall, what we are saying is right now at full project costs, the referendum amount will be $28 million. However, we are anticipating that amount for the district's portion should be able to come down about $10 million for a total of $18 million.
Thank you. And as I understand it, based on the report, we also have DCCs that would figure into this. And I believe that was on the order of 5 million.
Yes, that's correct. So based on the total project costs as presented in the report and as per the resolutions, the district share is $32.8 million approximately. But as we presented that our cost based on grant success would only be $28 million. It's because Ms. Liu has looked at funding portions of our share with money that we know is available today, meaning DCCs have covered some of the costs of that to offset that amount from $32 million district share to $28 million of the district share. That is all we know today. As of 2025, that's what we can fund. But from 2025 through 2029, more DCCs become available, we'll be able to offset that cost even more by funding more of the projects through DCCs. Additionally, over the next 4 years, prior to the actual loan being taken out, which happens at the end of the project, council will be provided by myself and Ms. Liu other opportunities to potentially reduce the borrowing amount even more. If future grant opportunities come up, which we know there will be a couple because we've been very successful with $500,000 active transportation applications on an annual basis. Plus, in council's decision during budget deliberations, if asset management is continuously funded at 2% to 3% a year, there could be additional revenues coming in with asset management funds that could also further offset the loan amount. The ultimate referendum amount would still have to be at $28 million, but we're hoping to do whatever we can to bring forward any additional opportunities of funding through grants, through district reserve funds, asset management funds, as best we can up until when the projects are complete.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from Councillor Beddoes and Mayor Tate?
Yeah, Councillor Beddoes here. I was pleased to hear that we would sort of have to commit the 28 million, but we're likely, hopefully, I know it's a bit of a pig in a poke, come in at much lower than that, and I'm pleased to hear that. I just as a question to staff, when it comes to funding streams, have we heard from the province? The province gave us a great deal of difficulty saying, you know, our traffic on Highway 14 was our problem. And so have we heard from the MLA, or have we heard from the province if there's a funding stream for us to help out here?
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. I'll pass the question to Ms. Gray.
Sure. Councillor Beddoes, through Deputy Mayor St. Pierre to Councillor Beddoes. Yeah, my staff's plan is depending on council's resolutions passed for the grant report as well as the next long-term borrowing referendum is to send follow-up correspondence to Minister Callon because in his letter in regards to Bill 44, he also indicated that we need to move on the through connector. So my plan was to provide a draft back or to provide response back to Mr. Callon based on council's direction today potentially and let him know next steps and then as well encourage him and our MLA La Jeunesse to help us out here because as we can
All
see.
right, good. Well, thank you for that through the chair to Ms. Gray. That's encouraging signs, especially when the minister has reached out in advance that indicated that there may be some help there, and we could sure use it. So thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you, Councilor Battles, for the question. Mayor Tate?
Yes, thank you. Just one last piece. As this item progresses, and I'm aware that Mr. Carter had shared the materials that will be available for the public for their review. I highly recommend, as per Councillor Bateman stated, that any and all support letters that are received also form part of that package, so that the community can see that engagement as well as any concerns that have been brought forward and how we've addressed them. Just taking note of Miss Eve's comments that were in the earlier public input session that we are hearing those concerns and how we're addressing them. So whether that's an FAQ and then listing out those letters, I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor
So
Tate.
not really a question, just something I think we should do. Thank you.
Councilor Bateman?
Okay, so a few more questions. Speaking of FAQs, I saw on the Active Transportation Grant FAQ, there is one question: is a municipal attestation or endorsement from council required for a municipal applicant? And the answer is municipal applicants do not require municipal council endorsement, resolution, or other form of attestation at the time of application. Should the project funding be approved, such an attestation may be required as a condition of the funding agreement. So my question is, through you to Mr. Carter, is this resolution tonight give us an even better chance at getting this funding? I assume that's why it's here for us.
Through the chair to Councillor Bateman, I worked with Miss Moog and she added some FAQs to my report. But as far as I understand it, the grant requirement is to have a council resolution, exactly how I've presented them for council's consideration, to form part of the grant applications, and it's very standard for any provincial or federal applications.
Okay, I've clearly misread that document. Okay, I'm curious. Yeah, maybe, Councillor, Deputy Mayor, just bear with me for just a couple more quick ones here. The relationship between the district and the ministry at this point in time, that's off topic, isn't it? Okay.
Any other questions, Councilor Bateman? Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions, Councilor Beddoes, Mayor Tate?
No,
All right.
thank you.
No.
Hearing none, at this point in time, I think I'm just going to call the question. All in favor? Hearing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8.2. I think long-term borrowing referendum update.
Good evening, everyone. Through the chair to council and members of the public, I'm here tonight to talk about the preparation for a referendum. This is for the long-term borrowing on some key capital projects in our community, what it means to council and Sooke residents, and how the process is conducted. A referendum is very similar process to a local election where you vote for your councillor. It's by paper ballot, and the ballot typically contains a yes or no question. So in order for the referendum to pass, it requires a majority of the votes cast to be yes. So within the next 2 years, it's highly likely that the district will have a by-election and a general election take place. The combination of the referendum with an election will save $39,000, which is the cost of holding one election. Obviously, when the two events are held at the same time, the work is done once instead of twice. Staff have provided 3 options regarding the referendum schedule in alignment with the election and grant application timeline. Council needs to weigh the pros and cons of each option and provide direction to staff. So when preparing for the referendum, there are 5 factors to consider. Let's look at the long-term borrowing process first. This slide provides a high-level summary of the long-term borrowing process. Municipalities in BC are required to finance long-term borrowing through the regional district and the Municipal Finance Authority with approval of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. The CRD and the MFA have 2 long-term borrowing intakes per year in spring and fall. With all relevant deadlines included, the entire long-term borrowing process may take up to 1 year. A referendum is required before the loan authorization bylaw can be approved by council. The bylaw can only be adopted when a majority of the votes are in favor of the bylaw. A typical question on the ballot related to long-term borrowing would sound like this. Are you in favor of the district adopting the loan authorization bylaw to authorize the borrowing of up to X amount for the purpose of building roads at X location? The ballot states a specific borrowing amount, which is also the maximum amount to be borrowed. We may borrow less than that amount, but we cannot exceed the maximum. If the final project costs are lower, only the actual cost will be borrowed. And this would, of course, reduce the cost to each property owner. We may use temporary borrowing while the project is being built, and after the construction is finished, convert the temporary borrowing into a long-term loan when we know exactly how much to borrow. The district is planning multimodal transportation capital projects at Sooke Road and Phillips that will require debt financing. The current total budget submitted for the grant application exceeds $49 million. The district will contribute about $5 million from DCC, cash in lieu funds, and other grants. The Housing Infrastructure and the Communities Canada's Active Transportation Grant opened at 2024 year end. We are currently applying for the grant totaling $16.9 million. This leaves roughly $28 million to borrow. The grant funder will only announce the successful applicants between late 2025 and early 2026. This outcome is a critical factor in scheduling and framing the borrowing amounts on the referendum question. The grant money will reduce the borrowing by 38%. Another factor that will impact the loan payment is the interest rate. Bank of Canada's policy rate has been falling from 5% to 3%. It's difficult to predict future rate based on past trends. The big question that many people always want to know is, what is this going to cost me? Over a 30-year amortization period, a loan of $28 million with the grant funding, based on the 2024 property tax data, the average home in Sooke would pay $146 to $169, from $146 to $169 each year. A loan of $45 million without the grant, this payment will increase to $235 to $272 per year. A range is given to account for interest rate variances. So if the borrowing amount is further reduced by $10 million, the payments per household could be under $100 per year. This is achievable by having a reduced contingency amount, more grants available, a healthy asset management reserve contribution, and competitive bids when we tender out the project. Any of these conditions could reduce the taxpayer's burden on loan payment. Looking at the three options related to the referendum schedule, under option 1, if the referendum is held this spring in 2025, together with the by-election, will save the cost but will not know the grant status. If option 1 goes ahead, we would need to state the full borrowing amount of $45 million on the ballot question because the grant status has not been confirmed. If referendum can be held independent from an election immediately after knowing the grant status, option 2 will cost additional $39,000 to the taxpayers. Option 3 is to combine the referendum with a general election to be held in October 2026 after knowing the grant application status. So only under option 2 or 3 will the grant application status be known. If successful with the grant, we can state the lower borrowing amount of $28 million. To summarize, the advantage of an early referendum under option 1 before the grant approval is that the borrowing process and construction could start sooner if the majority of the votes are in favor of the borrowing in full amount. Option 2, having a standalone referendum is expensive. If council prefer to know the grant outcome before holding a referendum and save cost, the district would need to align the referendum with the 2026 general election. The downside of option 3 is the delay in receiving confirmation of public support for the project borrowing. So just to add the public comments at the beginning of this meeting, public prefer to have a specific date of the referendum. So far, the only specific date known to me is the option 3. The general election date is October 17th, 2026. So for the other two options, option 1 and 2, I don't have a specific date. So all three options will give us enough time to secure the funding by the fall of 2027. Tender out the project by the end of 2027, carry out construction work in 28 to 2029, and complete the project in 2030. So that's the timeline required by the grant funder. This is a quick overview of the options related to the long-term borrowing referendum. I will take questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Liu. Any questions from Councillor Bateman and Mayor Tate? Since I can't see you, I'll start with you.
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Beddoes?
Just a second here. Yeah, that's a lot to digest, but so option 2, we would have to ask for a whole pile of money. Option 1, I mean, option 2, we'd have a better understanding of exactly what we're asking, and the downside is we might have to spend $39,000, which, considering we're dealing with $48 million. I guess I don't really have a question. That was just rambling, but I sort of was just rolling those things around in my head. You get a lot of information in such a short time, but I think we need more information, but option 2 to me sounds like the better way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, thanks for such a thorough report and a nice breakdown of the options. I saw in your breakdown of with or without the grant, the costs, you also had a 3.5% interest rate, which would take it down further. So I guess trends in interest rates currently are dropping. So potentially by October 26, it will be reduced further.
It's difficult to predict future interest rate. Even experts, famous economists, get it wrong all the time. Just report to council, actually the 3.5% is a very realistic rate as of today. So actually MFA, they could obtain 3.5% right now. But when they let us calculate the cost of the loan for long-term loan, they want us to use the 4.8%. Because they go to the markets, sell bonds, they don't know exactly what rate they will get for that day, really. So they don't want us to underestimate the cost. They want us to use the 4.8 or 4.6%. Actually, they could get 3.5. It's a very realistic rate. Yeah.
So I've dived into the weeds a little bit, and I note that the MFA will lock in a percentage for 10 years, and then you must renegotiate.
Yeah.
Based on the current rates at
Yes.
that time.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a mystery as well.
Yeah.
Do you have a total cost of this loan with interest over its 30-year lifespan? Was that in the report, or did I miss that?
I didn't give the full amortization schedule. I can email to you later. Yeah, I only have the first 5-year payments on my appendix. Yeah.
I assume that'll be part of the public package as we move forward. Okay, great work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a few questions and comments myself. First one is a curiosity. If we were to ask for $49 million, what's left of our actual spending limit with the MFA?
I believe through the chair to council, I believe you're asking our maximum debt servicing limit.
That is correct.
So I calculated based on last year's financial statements. Each year, I believe our maximum is around $3.8 million per year. Right now, we're under that limit.
Okay, that didn't quite answer my question. So I believe that based on what we actually have in terms of revenues, we have, a certain amount of a spending limit. With the MFA, we can only borrow a certain amount. How much of that amount does 49 million represent? What would be left?
Okay.
If we were to wish, if we wanted to buy parkland, if we wanted to invest in anything at all, what's left after we put potentially $49 million into this?
I believe we're at roughly at 70%.
70%.
Yeah.
So theoretically another 20,
Roughly,
another
yeah.
20 million or so. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. The next question I have is $49 million, of course, is a huge amount. It's likely to have major sticker shock. Having said that, it's not the actual ask, I believe. The actual ask is 28 million, I believe. Okay. So let's say we ask for $28 million and that still has huge sticker shock and our community says no. At that point, what happens in terms of the grants? If we have received them. And that'd be a question, I guess, from Mr. Carter.
If the district cannot come up with their share of the project contribution, the grant partners would be notified and we would basically walk away from the opportunity. Because as we would be committing to the funding on paper, they're also committing to the funding on paper and not actually paying us for it until we realize the project. So we would just be walking away from the opportunity.
Okay, so essentially we would leave the $16.8 million on the table and say we can't use it right now. Thank you very much. Now, if we were to have a referendum that failed, do we have an option of coming back with a second referendum with a different amount? As I understand it, circumstances might change. We might be looking at reductions in interest rates, additional savings through staff, so on and so forth. Do we have an option of at a second referendum, or having made one referendum ask, are we done on that one question?
Through the chair to council, I believe we do have a second chance. I would think it's logical. The second referendum, we put a lower amount on the ballot question. Yeah, that is the option.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Councillor Beddoes and Mayor Tate. Any further questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have one. And we may not know this, but my concern is, what is the impact of the tariffs going to be on the costs? It's difficult to see that there's going to be saving or lower rates, given what's coming at us in the news. So part of me wants to lock in the interest rate when it's at a reasonable price, as opposed to waiting and that big unknown. And I guess it's a crystal ball, but that is a reality that we're staring at right now. Is there any comment on that?
Thank you for the question, through the chair to Mayor Tate. I can only comment on the locking down the interest rate. I will leave the tariff part to Mr. Carter. I don't know if the project material involved anything from import from the states or, you know, or not. But regarding locking down the interest rate, we only want to commit to 100% of the long-term borrowing after the project is complete, because we don't want to overborrow. We want to
Right.
borrow exactly how much we need. So we'll use temporary borrowing in the interim. For example, if the lowest interest rate I have ever seen on MFA's website is 0.9%. If the interest rate ever hits all-time low, we can always borrow 50 or 80% of the total cost. I have two issues. The first issue is borrow, 50 or 80%, and then the second issue to borrow the remainder, just to mitigate the risk on the interest going up and down. But the key is you don't want to borrow 100% before the project even completes. You don't know how much exactly to borrow.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Mr. Carter, any thoughts on potential cost escalations or increases?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Tate, we should not see anything too substantial for that. There's not a lot of imported materials in these projects from the state. A lot of it is built with resources, construction equipment and stuff like that. There may be minor effects due to some minor import materials related to wall construction, if there was some stuff that came out of the states, but nothing substantial that shouldn't be covered, that should not be already covered in the 10% we've accounted for inflation within the unit rates.
Thank you very much. I just realized something. We're actually discussing this without a motion at this point in time. I already broke my rule. Very sorry about that. So I'm going to move, or I'm going to ask perhaps Councillor Bateman to move, that council receive this report for information.
Second.
The council receive this report for information, and do you have a preference?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. That council direct staff to prepare for long-term borrowing assent voting opportunity bracket referendum to be conducted in combination with the 2026 general local election.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Second, Tate.
Seconded by Mayor Tate. Okay. Any further comments on the motion on the floor?
Well, as the mover, I'll just reiterate that we have seen a really good case for waiting until 2026. All the logic is right there in the staff report, and I think there's still a lot of process ahead of us, particularly as groups organize for both yes and very likely no. And we need to go through this really significant process. And this is indeed our second opportunity to get the funding to build out this project. We said no in 2006, and I really look forward to a lively debate as we lead up to the next general election. Thank you.
Councillor Bateman, I don't know if you have the answer to this question. Do you know what the cost was in 2008?
Don't have that number, but I do have the 2014 number in that business case study. And it indicated then, I think it was around $3 million. And that was just for the charters to Phillips component. But I think further evidence that unless, the costs are going nowhere but up.
Thank you very much. All right. At this point in time, I'd like to make just a very quick comment.
Sorry, Councillor, point of order, Councillor, Chair St. Pierre. I was a seconder to that, so do I not get to speak next?
Please go ahead.
Can I clarify, like what I heard Councillor Bateman say was option 3, the referendum to be held in October 26 in combination with the general local election, but I'm looking at okay, the screen just changed. Okay, in common, it's okay. That's correct, right? It had up. Maybe I'm losing my mind. I thought I saw option 2 on the screen, so that's why I was confused. it is option 3 with the general election. And yeah, I really appreciate the staff report, just listing out the options, the pros and the cons. I did have a concern though that without indicating that we have funding, and I guess this is a question back to Mr. Carter on the first part, is we're applying for the grant, we've made that resolution, but we cannot indicate to the funder that we actually have our share. So would that hamper or hinder our ability to actually be successful with the grant? Because it would be contingent on this referendum. We don't have that share yet.
Thank you, Mayor Tate. To staff?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Tate, it will not make an impact because the resolution for council to commit to their share of the project, including cost overruns, is indicated for when the project is realized, which is earmarked for the end of 2027. So the referendum answer and our commitment to the share of the project would be known prior to us actually having to commit the funds.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Okay, so in that case, October 2026 it is, and further to what Councillor Bateman said, it does, there are some more knowns that'll be available by that time, as well as public feedback. And I guess the only concern is that everything seems to increase in price over time, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tate. Councillor Beddoes, any further comments?
Yeah, I was a little confused there why we're on option 3, because I was leaning towards option 2, which was, it does cost an extra $39,000. But as soon as we know what the grant outcome is, to me, it would be best to go sooner than later, to wring it out, another year. It may be that long anyways. But that option 2 was, if we're talking about saving 39,000, which I understand is, still a substantial amount of money, but I think it'd be important for us to move sooner than that if we knew the outcome of what the federal government's going to kick our way.
I have a further question for staff based on Councillor Beddoes' question or comment. Based on the timelines that we're anticipating in terms of getting information back on the grant, what would be the delay? What would be the difference between holding a referendum immediately following the receipt of the information and waiting for the general election? What is the time span? Are we looking at 6 months, a year?
Through the chair to council, for example, we find out the grant status January, around this time, 2026, will be just in time for the spring 2027 issue. So it takes just about 1 year. So if we wait October 2026 to do the referendum, so that means probably we'll secure the funding for the fall issue 2027. So 6 to 9 months difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's a 6 to 9 month difference if we call a referendum on its own.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just hope that helps a little bit for everyone.
Just to add, just to make things clear, so the timing difference between the two options, either early 2026 or October 2026, is the same year, right?
Still the same year.
Yeah, a few months difference.
Okay. Further question for staff. My understanding was that as there's a number of different factors. One is that the public, needs to have a chance to think about this, look at the information, receive information, basically have some input into this question because we're asking them to pay. That's one thing. And to some degree, the sooner the better on that. But I've also heard from staff, and this is why I think I'm leaning a little bit towards the option that Councillor Bateman suggested, but I want to clarify things, that the further we get into the project, the more likelihood of receiving other grants, potentially additional DCCs, potentially other revenues besides. Am I understanding this correctly? Which means that we would have potentially a more exact referendum question that would more clearly reflect our actual reality. Is that, am I understanding correctly?
Maybe I'll start, Councillor St. Pierre, Deputy Mayor St. Pierre. For sure, I think that was the idea with, not all the grants let you stack. So the fact that this grant stream allows you to stack potentially other grants, and with the a pending federal election happening, usually they do issue grant streams as part of their, we've just been elected and we want to make people happy. So I'm not unconvinced that there won't be other applicable grant streams and potentially even other grant streams. I suppose the active transportation is the priority for granting money, but as we know, sometimes other monies come up. It'll allow us more time to negotiate with the province and confirm if they have any grant streams that we're potentially eligible for. So yeah, the more time that passes, obviously the more knowns and the more realistic and transparent we can be with the public when it comes time to click yes or no on that ballot.
Thank you for that. Any further comments, Councillor Beddoes, Mayor Tate? Hearing none, Councillor.
Thanks for that comment from staff. That has cleared it up quite a bit. I'm leaning more towards this option 3, but I understand we're just directing council to start the process. So I'm okay with the what's before us on the screen.
Any further comments, Councillor Bateman? No? Okay, then I'll call the.
Oh, sorry, just one point of clarification. If there's nothing to stop council from down the road later on this year if information changes to potentially provide different direction to staff. I guess just to throw that out there as a caution is if something does change between now and October, as we're prepping for the referendum, as you see, there's a lot of moving pieces to this. There's a lot of layers to this. The public information piece is going to be a huge part of this to make sure public fully understands the pros and the cons and all of that. So as that's changing, there always could be opportunities for council to provide an updated direction to staff. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you very much for that. And before I call the question, I'm just going to mention that the numbers in terms of what it will actually cost residents, as opposed to the millions of dollars, is probably much more useful, much more real. Millions of dollars scares the hell out of most people. $100 or $150 to have better transportation through our roads might be more appealing. It's not, I don't believe we're not lying to anyone here. We're just trying to be very clear what's it actually going to cost them specifically. And I think that's where our attention should be focused, because otherwise there's just very scary numbers, $40 to $49 million. Come on. Anyway, I will now call the question. All in favor? Hearing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much. So moving on to, well, we're never getting out of this, are we? 9.1, Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 921/2025. And this is that council give first, second, and third reading to bylaw cited as Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 921/2025. I'm looking for a mover.
Move Tate.
Moved by Mayor Tate, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything to say, Mayor Tate?
No, we do this. We do this every year. So
I know.
thank you.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah.
Okay, calling the question. All in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. On to new business. Any new business?
Yes, please, Mayor or Chair St. Pierre. Thank you. I have a item with a request to waive notice that I've put on the screen here. Process wise, I'll just read it out. A request to waive notice tonight. And that is whereas the Edward Milne Community School Wolverines have made it to the 3A Boys Basketball Provincial Championship for the first time in Sooke history. And whereas the upcoming tournament will take place, on March 4th to 8th, 2025 in Langley, BC. Therefore, due to the short time frame, this leaves the team with limited means to fundraise and no available funding from the school district to be available. Therefore, be it resolved that the council directs staff to provide a sponsorship to the EMCS Wolverines, the amount of $1,000 for this event, with the funds to come from council contingency.
Okay, so I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Bateman, thank you very much. Mayor Tate, would you like to speak to the motion further, or?
I guess I just need clarity from our corporate officer. Do you need a motion to waive notice first, or have I kind of done that in both?
Thank you. I reviewed the procedure bylaw and I'm happy to essentially take tacit consent that no council member has any issues with this motion being presented. So I'm happy for you to go forward.
Okay, thank you. This is, I know that we have a grant procedure in place as well as sponsorship, but the timing of this, it just doesn't align with the group. It is a historic moment. We're very proud of the MCS teams. They've been working very hard to get to this point in time. So it's just because of the tight turnaround and their ability, they've never asked, as far as I know, for funding, but they have a very short window of time to pull this all together. And the team that travels will incur some costs for the tournament, hotel, and everything and the like. So that's why I'm bringing this forward. It will help offset some of that. And we don't do this all the time, but we do it when our youth make milestone achievements like this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bateman as a seconder, anything further?
No, this is one of those feel-good moments
Feel good?
where,
All right,
yeah,
go Wolverines. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, just one quick question for IT. My screen's gone dead, so I can no longer see Councillor Beddoes and Mayor Tate. If there's anything to be done, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, and moving on to correspondence requiring action. We have Town of View Royal letter in opposition to ministry changes to BC Building Code. This was requested for discussion by Mayor Tate. So Mayor Tate?
This is an item here that I thought we could receive and maybe forward to the Land Use Committee once it forms. So maybe just a motion to receive and to forward to the Land Use Committee for discussion.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Bateman. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and now we have Communities in Bloom request to register, also requested by Mayor Tate. Mayor Tate.
Yes, thank you. We have in the past been a solid participant in Community in Blooms. Council may recall seeing banners where we have the 5 bloom status. It's while I would desire us to participate in this, the intention of Community in Blooms is that it's a community-led initiative. And in the past several years, it's fallen on our staff to do all that work. So it's one thing to do that to get it up and rolling, but it should be handed over to a community group. So I guess I'm speaking out of turn, but the same motion would be that we receive for information and forward to the Community Economic Development Committee for consideration to participate in a future year. So not this year, but in a future year, pending that committee discussion.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bateman, thank you very much. I'll comment myself before we move any further that I smell a service agreement on this one. I think it would be appropriate to find a community group that was willing to take this on, but they may need additional capacity to take it on. And this is where the district could potentially help out without necessarily be full in. But any other comments, Councillor Beddoes, and Mayor Tate?
No, it is a lot of work but it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to showcase the community, but I think that's likely why we haven't had anyone step forward yet, because there is a lot of work involved, but it's a lot of fun and it's something to really consider. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll support this motion, Councillor Beddoes.
Okay, so I believe the motion is to receive for information and pass on to the ECDEV committee?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the National Farmers Union, Region 8 BC supports the Foodlands Access Service Initiative of the Capital Region District, requested by Councillor St. Pierre. The reason that I brought this forward was because we had a lot of correspondence in opposition, and it was from one source, but I thought that this was a good thing to actually make sure everybody heard, because it's actually from a larger group that supports farmers across BC. Good morning to all who may be interested. Please find attached the NFUBC letter of support for the Foodlands Access Service Initiative. The NFU is an organization of and for farmers and farm workers in Canada, working together to democratically achieve agricultural policies that ensure dignity and income security for farmers and farm workers while protecting and enhancing rural environments for future generations. The NFU advocates for a food system based on the principles of food sovereignty, which calls for a food system that values farmers and what they grow, rebuilds relationships between food producers and those who eat, reclaims local decision-making about food production and environmental protection, and strengthens connections between people and land, empowering communities and citizens to make intentional decisions based on local needs and conditions to ensure a resilient and sustainable future. The NFU collaborates locally, nationally, and internationally to research, educate, and share effective solutions that lead to a better world for farm families and the local communities. Thank you and congratulations on the great work being done in your community. So just a strong endorsement, but I wanted it, there was a lot of other information out there. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, well, I'll be happy to share, again, I did this last week, that at the CRD board meeting on February 12th, the Food Land Access Service was approved. It had gone through an alternate approval process. There were only 29 votes against. What this means for Sooke residents is an addition of $1.43 per resident on their 2026 tax bills. That works out to about $320,000 to launch the service annually, and it will stay at that amount for the first 5 years, with the opportunity in year 5, I believe it is, for another property to come online. They're starting with Bear Hill Regional Park, which is a CRD-owned piece of land, and they're creating, I think, 14, 16 plots and getting young farmers, or new farmers, I should say, onto that land to learn and educate and move forward. The program will also include, I'll add here, that when that next piece of property is to be identified, the CRD will canvass municipalities to explore potential sites. So Sooke might be able to get in on that. And Sooke farmers will be able to participate in a land match program through the BC Land Matching Organization. So it's a interesting service, and it's very much rooted in a whole series of documents dating back to 2016, the Regional Food and Agricultural Strategy, Regional Growth Strategy, Regional Food Lands Access Program, Feasibility Study, and Business Case have all been proud of that. So it's great news for food security in CRD.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Moving on, for discussion, I don't think we need to receive this information or anything. That I just really wanted it out there. So that's that. So item 11.4, Daniel Tsai, request for merging lane on Highway 14, requested for discussion by Councillor Bateman. Councillor Bateman.
Okay, so this is, Mr. Tsai is the owner of Daniel's Market in Casinos, and he has shared with us his correspondence with the former Minister of Transportation, Rob Fleming. He launched a bit of a campaign last summer to get a merge lane added in front of his business. Across the street is Mrs. Lure's farmhouse, of course, and the feeling there is that that's a bit of a safety issue. A center merging lane in front of those two businesses might be significant. Mr. Tsai has made a number of arguments in favor of the merge lane. He claims it is low cost. Major safety improvement for everyone. And I know from personal experience, a bit of an adventure turning into Daniel's Market from the westbound lane, and it's a bit challenging to move back into traffic out of the market. I'll just add that, as I do take my time going through these things, don't I? Mr. Fleming responded with a statement that such a project would involve a significant financial commitment for the property acquisition and drainage improvements to widen the highway. We have no plans right now, but I have shared your suggestion with ministry staff. He also suggested Mr. Tsai share his feedback with the district. So I have brought this forward tonight with the hope that through the MOU meetings with district ministry staff, that our district staff can add this particular item to the rather long list of wishes and wants for Highway 14, and that it may, just that it be part of this wish list, if indeed it isn't already.
So just to confirm, would this be a request for this to be part of future
No,
advocacy? or-
it's to be received for information with the knowledge that Mr. Carter and his team have heard and read this letter.
Thank you very much. So do we need a motion for that one? Okay, seconded by myself. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Okay, and 11.5, Carolyn Bateman requests the District of Sooke leave social media platform X, requested for discussion by myself.
Now, I'm going to have to recuse myself, which of course means we won't have quorum.
So, oh,
Perhaps we can discuss this at a later time, because I believe that Ms. Moog had answers to this particular question and would be the staff person most involved, and she's not able to be with us.
I would just suggest a motion to postpone this to a future
Ms. Gray-
council meeting.
Please.
If I may, if we don't have quorum, we can't do a motion, so staff will
Oh.
just bring this forward to an upcoming agenda.
Right, of course.
Thank you. Moving on to 11.6, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General response to South Island municipalities regarding ecom police dispatch costs. Mayor Tate, take it away.
Thank you, everyone. As you know, we've been following this item for several years now. As you may know, the 10 impacted communities mayors have been gathered to do as much advocacy on this as possible, including a media scrum at the legislature, letters and meetings, so forth. And this is the response that we've received. So unfortunately, it seems that this year at least we're going to need to find those costs and allocate it within our budget. So this is just the letter came, so I just pulled it here. It's disappointing given the rising costs of everything and how they're handling this. But I just felt it deserves some attention here, and that's why I brought it. So reluctantly, motion to receive, please.
Motion to receive, seconded by Councillor Bateman. I'll make a comment just now, and that's that don't know if I should or not. Well, we'll see if I pay. Let's put it that way. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'd just like to note that you did bring forward a strong motion last week that we approved. And do you plan to carry forward with that to get it through AVIC and UBCM?
Absolutely, that'll be moving forward.
Okay, good news.
So the work continues. Ms. Gray?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor St. Pierre. Just wanted to add from the staff perspective, I was on a call today with the CAOs for the 10 municipalities because we're also working together in conjunction with the mayors on any communications. And so we're just circling back and crafting up one more letter to Premier Eby, which will be circulated to the mayor and deputy mayor before it goes out, hopefully next week. And again, just highlighting kind of our four asks of, the review, the fairness, transition funding until the review is complete, and the cell phone levy, to actually explore that and do meaningful consultation with the municipalities affected here. So more to come on that. But as far as having to include it in the budget, that's also the other 10 munis we're all just in the stages of comparing notes right now of how we're going to approach this and obtaining some legal advice on how this could work. And to Mayor's point, some municipalities are either putting in the budget and taxing for it, or others are considering using surplus, which is very risky. So more information to come from the staff perspective.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Okay, so all in favor of receiving for information? Seeing none opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, nothing was removed from consent. Council verbal reports. If it's okay, I think we might hold off on those for tonight, just because we're missing so many people. And we were quite thorough last meeting. Okay, so at this point, item 14, adjourn to close meeting. And this is the council closed the meeting to the public pursuant to the following subsection of the committee charter, the time being 7:39. Okay, and it's being that 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. C, labor relations or other employee relations. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And M, a matter that under another enactment is such that the public may be excluded from the meeting. And Councillor Bateman has moved. And I'll second it. All in favor?
A point of order, do I have to come in another Zoom or do I can use this one?
I think it should stay on.
Yeah, please stay on the line.
Okay.
So I'm going to call the question again. All in favor?